So the first thing I'll always do when I'm packing is get the slider down to the risers. And I'm picking up the rear risers in one hand and the front risers in the other hand. I step in between and I move up to the canopy. And by shaking it around like that, you can see all the cells have fallen into place. And if I lay it down now, you can stroke out some of the air going from the tail to the nose, and I have a much better chance of seeing the continuity of the lines. Here what I'm doing is picking up the tail, the control lines, running down with it between my fingers, removing any twists, and setting the brake. So I'm bringing the control line down on the inboard side, below the guide ring, toggle set, and the lower control line gets stowed. So that's one brake set. I'll always pull on the canopy side to see that it's sitting in the correct position. Okay. And back up to the canopy again. And moving it down, and remove any twists. One or two twists are probably okay, but it is going to damage the line more rapidly if it's having the slider run past with twists in it. So my brakes are set. Now I'm ready to actually start the folding. So I'll pick up the individual line groups on the left and right hand side between my fingers, and I just squeeze them between my fingers, taking the slider with me. And I'm putting just sufficient force on there so I don't drag the container with me. As I get to the canopy, I'll transfer everything across into one hand. And right here in front of me, I've got the leading edge. So I'll count off the cells. That's my 9 cells, and I pinch them between my knees. Through this grommet, I've got the A lines and the B lines. You can identify them because of their length. So I'm looking for the center cell. In this case, it's really easy with the black cell. My hand's going down inside and creating the fold. As I move around, I'm making sure that the stabilizer slider stop ring is clear, and my B lines are waiting for me there. So my hand slips down inside and I create the next fold. I follow the stabilizer around. It's too small to get my hand into, so I'll nip around the side here, and there are my lines. And I introduce a fold. And now I'll reposition that D line across and towards the middle. My stabilizer finishes at the tail. That's a break line there. And a fold between each line. That's half the canopy done. So I'll do exactly the same on the other side. Finding my A lines, introduce a fold, follow the stabilizer around. That's my B lines. That's my C's. That's the canopy packed. I'll position the slider in its comfortable position. So I've just got it crossed up like that. And back inside, I'll double check that my D lines aren't misbehaving. In this case, I've got 5 on each side. So I'm looking for 10 D lines. They're all there. And I'll find the center cell and gently hold it there. Got disturbed. I'll do the nose. Here's my center cell. the 4 cells on this side. I just introduce a little roll towards the center, and the other side, make the same again. So folding it in, just so it doesn't feel left out. Okay, now I'm ready to cocoon the canopy. I'll use my leg to keep the parachute in its sector at the back. And as the two meet, I introduce half the fold. That's now one complete fold, and another half fold. Now as I lay the parachute down, I'm just gently holding it here. I'll step forward to maintain the tension on the lines and just gently lower her to the ground. As it gets to the ground, the first thing I'll do is introduce a nice gap between the line groups. Okay, down where I'm wearing the harness, there's a gap between the line groups, and up here I'd like that as well. This means as it goes into the bag, it comes out of the bag like that as well. And the first shot of air is going up inside and filling my slider completely, so it can get the best opportunity to do its job. Comfortably take a seat on the slider, and I'm using this center cell top skin, just holding it with some tension and pressing it down, and it helps to deflate the rest of the canopy. Once I get it kind of down, my hands have now hit the ground, so I'll just change across and press down in the center and work on one side. So if I'm putting a bit of tension here, it's going to help to avoid the air escaping into the opposite side. Decide where the fold is going to be. It's going to be a large pinch here. That's for the fold. So I lift up and throw one large fold underneath. And my leg goes on top of what I've just worked with, and I have my 2 hands free to do the same on the other side. And the leg goes on top. Now I'm ready to set my pilot chute. I don't bother doing it before because as I'm standing up packing the parachute, it's going to drop down with gravity, so I'll just do it once, moments before it goes in the bag. The bag and the attachment point need to be real close to each other, and it's always 2 steps. So step 1 and step 2. With the bridle flat, I look inside and I can see the central line is relaxed, and the center tape is what's forming the shape of the pilot chute. Okay. So, ready to introduce the first fold. All that's happening is my fingers are clamping the lines together to stop them escaping, and I lift the canopy up and create the first part of the fold and back down again. Notice how the slider is quite deep inside the pack job. That's going to help to maintain it in its place while I'm bringing the next one on top. My knees are going just either side of the slider, and I'm going to form the next fold over the lap. I'm trying to resist the temptation of forcing all the fabric in towards the middle of the pack job. I really want to keep some of this fabric on the outsides in order to take advantage of the complete bag. So that's maybe about 80% complete. As my knee comes out, my hand goes in to hold the slider in place, and my knees are right next to the parachute here. As I rotate that over and gently rest with my forearm on the right hand side, I have my 2 hands free to scalp the fabric into the shape that I'm after. Okay. And the mouth of the bag slides underneath and is trapped by my knee now. And I'm just starting the first corner, aiming for that first corner. Once it begins to go in, I'll do exactly the same on the other side. So I'm gently resting on top of the canopy, not squeezing too much. Sculpt the fabric into the shape that I'm after. And that's not as much putting the parachute into the bag as it is peeling the bag around the parachute. And really just aiming for the corners. The center's going to sort itself out in a moment. So round I come again. At this point, that fold there, I want to get it right in the middle. My knees are supporting the back of the bag, and I'll just fold that back on itself. That first fold is contained. And I move my fingers down to do the same with the bottom one. As I'm doing that, I'm slowly rotating the bag over, and that closes off the distance on the mouth. It'll be much easier to close. Has the mouth closed up now? All of the elastics are completely wrapped around, and I'm dragging the container towards me because I'm on a clean, smooth surface. If it wasn't that way, I'd be walking towards the container. Once the mouth is closed, I'm stowing the rest of the elastics, and here are my elastics on the edge of the bag. I'm not taking the lines to the elastics, I'm bringing the elastic to the line. The bite of line, that's the amount of line on the other side of the elastic, is not that big, but it's being held firmly. And each time I take a grip on the lines, I'm really holding them quite firmly, and I'll prepare the line going back to where it will be next. And I can decide exactly where my bite is going to be. Okay, so I'll put one more on here with the idea that probably I'll be dropping it off. Let's see what it looks like once it's in the container. With my elastics mounted on the outside of the bag but being dragged across to meet my lines, they're going to be trying to return to their anchor point on the outside, and as a result, everything here is kept really nicely in control. So it's really neat, tidy. Prepare the container. employment bag gets picked up, it comes straight across and just sits down like that. Because I'm going to prepare my risers first. And that's lifting up the piece and following the contour around. As I'm putting these risers into the container, I'm folding the toggles forward and the dive loops forward, and that's going to give them a set so when it comes out they'll be open, easier to grab. I don't want to be cutting the corner with the risers and putting the covers themselves under extra work. So that's in place. Now my bag gets lifted back up and sits on top, so I can see what I have to work with. Right now, this is looking like it's going to be a little bit short. As this bag goes into the container, this side here is going to be pulling a bit too tight, so I'm going to drop that last elastic off. Get the lines going straight to the bottom of the container. Out the way. And as the bag goes in, I'm going to support the lines and keep them in the lower section. Okay? So the bag's entering at about a 45-degree angle initially. This section here sits up against a divider wall, and change the angle by pulling on the cord and rotate, and it slots in. Bridle's exiting the same side as a pilot chute pocket mouth, the BOC, and comes across. So the first flap, I'm pulling the loop through further than I really need to. If I gently kneel on top, I've got my hands free and don't have to keep any tension. Back down. On this vector, the fact that the grommet is offset slightly from the center line is helping you remember that this is the next flap. So with the loop pulled through, take the pull-up cord out, put the pin in, and drop it back down. Once it's pinned, you can dress up the sides a little bit more. I'm always leaving sufficient bridle above the pin to allow the pin to be extracted before it starts tensioning up. I don't use the green mark on the window. I prefer to inspect my pilot chute at the pilot chute itself, so I'm doing a double check that the central tape is under tension and the center line is completely relaxed. Okay. So I'll take the bridle and put it underneath the flaps in this sort of position. So with this pilot chute, the reference for the center of the pilot chute is the handle. It gets folded in half and the bridle's just sitting right there. This comes across towards the handle. And I introduce the turns or the folds as tightly as I can get them, all the way towards the middle, and the same again on the other side. I'm holding it so that I can measure up the bridle, and once I get that measurement correct, I release the grip, sink the bridle down inside, and tighten it up again. The bridle exits the bottom of the pilot chute with a long enough tail so that as it goes into the pocket it takes the extra with it. The smooth surface is facing out. The two rolls are facing the container with the locking tongue right there. So I introduce it to the pocket, just nice and gently, a few centimeters at a time. I push it in a bit further than it needs to be, press down, get the locking tongue underneath the channel. Once it's in, I'll give it a tap down to fill it completely. And if I wasn't going to be jumping, I would leave the pilot chute out of the pocket to conserve the fabric.